I stare at the security monitor in the restaurant's back office, my hands trembling so violently I can barely keep hold of the plastic cup of water they gave me. On the black and white footage, I see myself. I am seated at a small table in the dining room. I'm smiling, tilting my head back as I laugh at something. I reach across the table, stretching out my hand as if to cover someone else's palm with mine. But there is no one sitting opposite me. The chair is empty. I look unhinged, like a woman carrying on a romantic conversation with thin air. And then something happens that makes the security guard beside me stop chewing his gum. The color drains from his face. On the empty side of the table, a wineglass slowly detaches itself from the white tablecloth. It rises into the air and tilts, as though invisible lips are taking a measured sip. This is not a trick. This is not a hallucination. This is the story of the Valentine's Day I spent with someone who does not exist. Welcome. You're in a place where silence can sound louder than a scream. Get comfortable. It all began with cards. Not the glossy, mass-produced kind sold in supermarkets for a few dollars, but thick, handmade envelopes crafted from creamy, textured paper. They arrived every year exactly 1 week before February 14th. The handwriting was elegant, the letters sharp and deliberate. There was never a signature. Only words. But what words they were. The author knew things about me I was afraid to admit even to myself. He described my dreams with unsettling accuracy. He mentioned nights of loneliness when I cried into my pillow at 3 in the morning. He knew the music I listened to on my commute and what I thought about as I watched rain trail down the bus windows. At first, it terrified me. I considered going to the police. But there was so much warmth in his words, so much understanding, an almost inhuman tenderness, that my fear slowly gave way to anticipation. I began waiting for the letters. I began living for them. This year, the letter was different. It contained an invitation. The Silver Elm. February 14th. 8:00 p.m. I'll be in a slate gray suit. I would finally like to touch your hand. My mind screamed that it was a trap. A stalker. A disturbed man who had watched me for years. But my heart was so tired of being alone. I put on my best black dress. Styled my hair carefully. Wore the perfume I had bought and saved for a special occasion. The restaurant was half empty, bathed in soft candlelight that shimmered against tall windows where wet snow slid down the glass. I saw him immediately. He was seated at a corner table. Perfect. Exactly as I had imagined him over the years. High cheekbones. Dark hair lightly brushed with silver at the temples. A slate gray suit tailored to perfection. When I approached, he rose to his feet. His eyes were such a deep brown they appeared almost black. "Adriana," he said. His voice was low and enveloping, like velvet drawn slowly across skin. We sat down. The evening unfolded like a fairy tale. We talked about everything. He knew I hated olives and gently removed them from my salad before I could say a word. He knew that as a child I had dreamed of becoming a concert pianist. His humor was subtle, lightly edged with irony, the exact tone that made me laugh. For the first time in years, I felt alive. I remember the warmth of his fingers when he covered my hand with his. His skin was dry and hot. I remember the scent of his cologne, sandalwood mixed with something metallic, like ozone before a thunderstorm. The waiter approached us several times. He was quiet, placing dishes down quickly, barely looking at us. I preferred it that way. I have never liked intrusive service. I've waited so long for this, he said, lifting his glass of red wine. You can't imagine how difficult it is to be close and yet unable to manifest. I clinked my glass against his. The crystal chimed softly. Why now? I asked. Because the boundary has grown thinner, he replied, a strange phrase whose meaning would only strike me later. The evening ended around 11. He walked me to a cab and kissed my hand. I sank into the back seat feeling weightless. I was in love. I was no longer alone. Only when I removed my coat at home did I realize I had left my phone on the table beside my napkin. I had been so consumed by him that I forgot it entirely. I immediately ordered another ride back. The restaurant was closing. A weary manager with dark circles under his eyes reluctantly let me inside. Table 9, in the corner, I said. I was dining there with a man in a gray suit. The manager gave me an odd look. With a man? Yes. About an hour ago. We walked to the table. My phone was not there. Perhaps the waiter picked it up? I suggested. Or my date took it to return to me. Ma'am, the manager said, frowning, you were here alone. I laughed, short and sharp. What kind of joke is this? I was with a man. Tall, dark-haired. We ordered 2 pastas and a bottle of wine. You ordered 1 pasta and a bottle of wine, he interrupted. The server mentioned you were behaving strangely. Talking to yourself. A wave of cold swept through me. Anger flared, sharp and desperate. Show me the security footage, I demanded. I'll prove you're wrong. He sighed and led me into the cramped back office. A wall of monitors glowed in the dim light. He rewound the footage to 8:30 p.m. I saw myself sitting at the table. Across from me, an empty chair. No man in a gray suit. No one. I watched myself smile at nothing. Move my lips in response to questions no one asked. Laugh while staring at the back of an empty chair. It's edited, I whispered, my legs turning weak. It's some kind of trick. Look closely, the manager said quietly. His voice trembled. On the screen, I reach across the table. My hand hovers in midair as if resting against something invisible. My fingers curl, gripping emptiness. But the most horrifying detail was not that. The fabric of my sleeve compresses, clearly pressed inward as though someone were squeezing my hand in return. And then comes the moment with the wineglass. On the footage, a full glass of wine sitting opposite me, where no one should be, begins to slide slowly across the tablecloth. It lifts upward to the height of a seated face. The wine inside ripples. The level of liquid drops by nearly an inch. Then the glass lowers gently back into place. The manager freezes the frame. The wineglass hangs suspended in midair on the screen. "Who was that, ma'am?" he whispers. I don't answer. I run. I don't remember how I got home. I locked every bolt and chain. Drew the curtains tight. I sat curled in the corner of the couch, hugging my knees, shaking. My phone lay on the kitchen counter. I had never left it at the restaurant. The screen lit up with a new message from an unknown number. The wine was exquisite. But your skin tastes even better. See you soon, my love. And then I heard it. The sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor in the hallway. Heavy. Deliberate. Unmistakably male. I live alone. The bedroom door began to open slowly, inch by inch. And before I saw anything, I recognized the scent. Sandalwood. And ozone. Technology is supposed to bring people closer, right? But sometimes it opens doors to those who aren't people at all. I downloaded an app called Eros out of sheer boredom. It was a new beta platform that kept appearing in my social media feed. Find your perfect match. Our artificial intelligence pairs you based on your subconscious. It sounded ridiculous. But on the evening of February 14th, when all my friends were out on dates and I was alone at home with a cold box of takeout pizza, it felt harmless enough. I filled out the profile. No photos required, just psychological assessments and long personality matrices. A minute later, the app chimed. You have a match. User, Mara. Compatibility, 99.9%. We started chatting. Mara was sharp, playful, daring. She typed quickly, flawlessly. Too flawlessly. Where are you right now? She asked. At home watching a series, I lied. In truth, I had been staring at the wall for nearly half an hour. Liar, her reply came almost instantly. You're sitting in an armchair wearing a navy t-shirt. There's a stain on your left sleeve. And you forgot to latch the kitchen window. I froze. I looked around the room. The webcam on my laptop was taped over. My phone lay face up on the table, its front camera pointed at the ceiling. Who are you? I typed, my fingers suddenly numb with cold. I'm your destiny, silly. Look out the window. I live on the 7th floor. My windows overlook a narrow courtyard boxed in by concrete walls. I walked to the sill and drew back the curtain. Down below, on the snow-covered playground, a figure stood beneath a flickering street lamp. Even from that distance, I could see she was wearing a red coat. She stood perfectly still, her face tilted upward, toward my window. My phone vibrated. Come down. I want to hold you. Every rational instinct screamed at me not to move. But something else pulled at me, something quiet and hypnotic. It felt as though invisible strings were fastened to my wrists, and she was tugging them gently, patiently. I slipped on my jacket and left the apartment. The elevator was out of order. I took the stairs 2 at a time. When I stepped into the courtyard, a blade of wind cut across my face. The playground was empty. No girl in red. Only the slow creak of swings swaying in the winter air. "Where are you?" I typed. "Turn around." I did. No one. Just dark entryways and silent windows. "I don't see you." "I'm closer than you think. I'm in your phone. Look at me through the camera." My hands trembled as I opened the camera app and pointed it at the empty courtyard. On the screen, in augmented overlay, she appeared. She stood barely 6 feet away. Tall. Unnaturally thin. Her face blurred, as if corrupted by bad resolution. Where her eyes should have been were black voids. Her mouth was sewn shut with coarse, uneven thread. And she was moving. On the screen, she stepped toward me. In reality, nothing. I lowered the phone. The courtyard was empty. I raised it again. Now she was 3 feet away, stretching her arms toward me. Her fingers were long and metallic, glinting like narrow blades. I ran. I sprinted toward the building entrance, hearing behind me not footsteps but a shrill digital distortion, like an old modem connecting, only louder, sharper, drilling straight into my skull. I slammed against the front door. The intercom failed to respond. My key wouldn't turn. I looked at my phone. She stood directly behind me. Her face hovered beside my shoulder. I could see the pixels of her skin flickering and reforming. A new message appeared. "You can't delete me." I hurled the phone against the wall. The screen shattered and went dark. Silence fell abruptly. I stood in the dim hallway, gasping for air. Had it ended? Slowly, I lifted my head. In the polished steel doors of the elevator, I saw my reflection. I was standing there, alone. And behind me, her. Her long gray arms were wrapped around my neck. I felt the cold of her body through my jacket. I felt the weight of her chin resting lightly on my shoulder. She had never been inside the phone. She had only used it to make me see her. To make me acknowledge her. To let her in. In the elevator's reflection, I watched as the threads across her mouth snapped one by one. Her lips peeled open into an impossibly wide smile filled with small, needle-sharp teeth. And I heard her whisper, not against my ear, but inside my head. "Happy Valentine's Day, my love. Now we'll be together. Always." If you're listening to this and the air in your room feels colder, don't turn around. Your secret Valentine may have already chosen you. Sometimes loneliness is protection. And the desire to be loved is an invitation to those who dwell in the dark spaces between worlds. Good night. And check your door lock. Though it probably won't make any difference. I was staring at my phone, my fingers trembling so badly I could barely unlock it. I just wanted to call my friend, ask her to come get me, to take me somewhere safe. But when my contacts finally opened, the screen was empty. No mom. No sister. Not a single saved number. I looked up at the man sitting across from me, smiling warmly, patiently, and that's when I saw the worst part. He had no eyes. Where his pupils should have been, there was only smooth, damp skin. Featureless. Seamless. And he kept smiling, tilting his head slightly as if nothing were wrong, asking me whether I liked the wine. This isn't an urban legend. It happened to me last Valentine's Day. I haven't celebrated the holiday since. And if you're on a date right now, make sure you actually remember the person's name. Buckle up. Tonight we're talking about love that quite literally erases you. It started perfectly. Too perfectly, maybe, for a dating app. His profile was understated, a couple of photos, a witty bio, no shirtless bathroom selfies. We messaged for a week. He was polite, intelligent, oddly old-fashioned. When he suggested meeting on February 14th, I hesitated. It felt like unnecessary pressure, a holiday built on expectations. But then I thought, why not? Better than sitting alone with takeout. He chose the restaurant. Said it was a new place, a hidden gem downtown hardly anyone knew about. He sent me a pin. The neighborhood was part of the old city, narrow streets twisting between brick buildings darkened by time. I took a rideshare. The driver's GPS started glitching near the end, insisting we were parked in the middle of the river. I got out on the corner and walked the remaining block. The restaurant looked intimate. Dark wood. Heavy velvet curtains. Warm golden light spilling softly through the windows. No visible sign, just a small, open plaque on the door. He was waiting at a corner table. Impeccable suit. Perfect hair. A bouquet of deep crimson roses resting beside his wineglass. He stood as I approached and pulled out my chair. It felt cinematic. We ordered wine and appetizers. The conversation flowed easily, books, travel, work. He spoke eloquently, attentively. But about 30 minutes in, a strange unease began to itch at the back of my mind. I tried to remember what we discussed 5 minutes earlier. I couldn't. I remembered his voice, low, velvety, soothing, but the meaning slipped away like water through cupped hands. He spoke a lot, but said nothing specific. No names. No cities. No dates. Are you all right? He asked gently, concern shaping his smile. Yes. Just. A little warm, I lied. I reached for my water and noticed the ice hadn't melted. Not even slightly. We'd been sitting there half an hour in a heated room, yet the cubes remained sharp-edged and perfect, like sculpted glass. The kitchen here is exceptional, he said, slicing into his steak. You should try it. I looked at my plate. The food appeared delicious, but it had no smell. None. No garlic, no seared meat, no perfume from nearby tables. The air was sterile. Empty. A cold wave of panic washed through me. I couldn't remember his name. I knew I'd seen it on the app. I knew we'd been messaging for days. I had said it aloud when we greeted each other. But now there was nothing. Just a void. Daniel? Victor? Ethan? I smiled, fighting to hide the panic, and slipped my phone out beneath the table. I'd check our chat. Easy. The screen flared to life in the dim room. I opened the conversation. It was there. But where his name should have been, there was a blank space. A gray silhouette where his photo had been. I scrolled upward. Hi, nice to meet you. Let's meet at. See you soon. Every proper noun had been cleanly removed. As if carefully erased. Who are you texting? His voice sounded right beside my ear. I flinched. He hadn't moved. He was still seated across from me. But his voice felt like it was behind my shoulder. No one, I said quickly, placing the phone face down. Just checking the time. Time doesn't matter here, he replied, smiling wider. Too wide. The corners of his mouth lifted beyond what seemed anatomically possible. His teeth were impossibly straight, impossibly white. I looked around the restaurant. There were at least 10 other tables occupied. Couples eating, drinking wine, leaning toward each other. But it was silent. No clinking silverware. No laughter. No murmured conversations. Their mouths moved. Their hands gestured. But there was no sound. The only sounds in the entire room were his voice and my heart pounding in my chest. I need the restroom, I said, rising unsteadily. Of course, he nodded. Don't be long. Dessert will be served soon. My legs felt numb as I walked past the other tables. No one looked at me. A woman near the aisle held a fork suspended inches from her lips, frozen mid-bite. I moved faster. A narrow hallway stretched ahead, lined with Victorian-patterned wallpaper. I pushed open a door marked, restroom. It wasn't a restroom. It was a kitchen. Massive. Stainless steel. Spotless. Completely empty. No chefs. No steam. No clatter of dishes. The stoves were cold, as if never used. On one of the metal prep tables sat my phone. The same phone I had just set down at my table. My breath caught. I grabbed it. A notification appeared. You have arrived at your destination. I spun around to run back to the dining room. The door was gone. In its place was a seamless wall of white tile. I was trapped inside the silent kitchen. Then one of the enormous industrial refrigerators in the corner creaked open with a heavy hiss. No cold air spilled out. Instead, I smelled my own perfume. I stepped closer, unable to resist the pull of the nightmare. Inside were rows of glass jars lining the shelves. Each jar contained a swirling cloud of gray mist. Labels were taped neatly to the glass. Memory of first pet. Mother's name. Home address. Companion's name. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the last jar. The glass was freezing against my palm. Smoke churned inside it. I hurled it to the floor. It shattered with a deafening crack that finally broke the unnatural silence. And in that instant, I remembered. His name was nobody. The lights went out. I woke up on a park bench nearly 2 miles from where the restaurant should have been. It was the morning of February 15th. My phone was completely dead. My coat and purse were gone, even though the temperature was below freezing. The police suggested I'd been drugged. Tests came back clean. The restaurant I described did not exist. At that address stood an abandoned warehouse. His dating profile had vanished, as if it had never been created. But that isn't the worst part. The worst part is that sometimes, when I sit in complete silence, I still hear his voice close to my ear. Dessert will be served soon. This happened 2 years ago, back when I was still living in Moscow. It followed the most predictable script imaginable. We met at work, exchanged glances across the open-plan office, and eventually he asked me out to dinner on Valentine's Day. His name was Alexei. I remember that with absolute certainty. His name was Alexei. That matters, because by the end of that night I was no longer sure of my own. We left the wine bar a little after midnight. My mood was light, the alcohol humming pleasantly through my veins. Alexei suggested we walk to the metro instead of calling a taxi. The weather was strange for February, wet, fog-laced, the snow reduced to gray slush under our shoes. "This way's faster," he said, turning beneath a stone archway. I knew the neighborhood. The old district near Kitay-Gorod, a maze of narrow courtyards hemmed in by pre-revolutionary buildings. Beautiful during the day. Atmospheric at night. But that night the atmosphere felt oppressive, almost sentient. We had been walking for 10 minutes when I noticed something wrong. The courtyards were identical. Peeling yellow plaster. A black entry door. Trash bins in the corner. Another arch leading onward. We passed 3 like that. Then 5. Then 10. "Alexei, are we sure we're going the right way?" I asked, stopping. My heels slipped on the ice. He didn't stop immediately. He took 2 more steps, then turned slowly. Under the weak glow of a street lamp, his face looked pale, his features slightly blurred. "Of course," he said. "We just need to find the exit." We kept walking. I pulled out my phone to check the map. The geolocation dot was jumping wildly, ricocheting across the city, one moment near the river, the next somewhere on the outskirts, then suddenly floating in the middle of the reservoir. No signal. Emergency calls only. "My phone's glitching," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you have service?" "Why would we need a phone?" he asked without turning around. "We're almost there." We stepped into another courtyard. This one was different. It was unnaturally narrow, the walls rising so high I couldn't see the sky. The windows were dark. Every single one. No warm light. No flicker of television screens. "Alexei, I'm scared," I said. "Let's go back." He stopped. "There is no back," he said quietly. "Didn't you notice?" "Notice what?" "The arches." I spun around. The archway we had just walked through was gone. In its place stood a solid brick wall. Old, cracked, streaked with moss, as if it had been there for a century. But we had passed through it seconds ago. I screamed. The sound came out muffled, as if my ears were packed with cotton. "Don't scream," Alexei said. His voice had changed, flat, mechanical. "You'll wake the building." He turned toward me fully. That's when I saw it. His clothes were changing. The fabric of his coat seemed to fuse with his skin. The denim of his jeans sank into his legs. And his face. His face was smoothing out. His nose diminished. His eyes blurred into two dark stains. His features dissolved, as though he were becoming a mannequin. "Who are you?" I whispered, backing against the wall. "I'm what you wanted to see," the thing that had been Alexei replied. "Isn't this a perfect evening? We're alone. Forever." The courtyard walls began to shift inward. I heard the grinding of stone against stone. The upper floor windows creaked open, and shapes leaned out, not people. Shadows. Long, elongated figures peering down with eyeless faces. I ran. Without thinking, I bolted toward the only dark opening at the far end of the courtyard. Behind me I heard no footsteps, only a wet, slapping sound, as if something were running barefoot through mud. "Stay," the creature shouted in Alexei's voice, though now the voice echoed from every window, every drainpipe. "We love you." I threw myself into the dark opening. It was an apartment entrance. The heavy door slammed shut behind me on its own. I was swallowed by total darkness. The air smelled of damp plaster and old paper. I began pounding on the door, begging to be let out. Suddenly it swung open. I stumbled onto a brightly lit avenue. Traffic roared past. People laughed, carrying bouquets and gift bags. I was on my knees in dirty snow, shaking and sobbing. I turned to look at the doorway I had just run through. It was the entrance to an ordinary bookstore. Through the glass, a clerk stared at me in confusion. Alexei didn't come to work the next day. Or the day after that. When I asked my colleagues about him, they looked at me strangely. "Alexei who?" the receptionist asked. "No one by that name has ever worked here." Human Resources showed me the staff list. My name was there. His was not. His desk didn't exist. In the spot where he used to sit stood an old printer covered in dust. But the most terrifying part is this: I still have one photo from that night on my phone. A selfie we took at the bar. In the picture, I'm smiling, holding a glass of wine. And beside me, where Alexei should be, there is only a blurred shape, roughly human in outline, but composed of brickwork and shadow. My story didn't happen in a restaurant or out on the street. It happened in my own home. And that's what terrifies me most, because it's much harder to run from your own home. I had been living with my boyfriend, Daniel, for 3 years. We had a steady, solid relationship. For Valentine's Day, we decided not to go out but to have a romantic dinner at home. I made lasagna from scratch. He brought home an expensive bottle of champagne. We lit candles and turned off the overhead lights. We were sitting on the living room floor, watching some old black and white movie. It was warm and comfortable. I rested my head on his shoulder and drifted off. You know that state between sleep and waking, when you can still hear everything but your body feels heavy and loose. I felt him stroking my hair. "You're so beautiful," he whispered. "It's a shame you have to go." "Go where?" I mumbled drowsily, not opening my eyes. "To make room." I snapped awake and sat up. "What did you just say?" Daniel was staring at the television. The credits were rolling. "I said the movie's over," he replied calmly. "Why are you so jumpy?" I exhaled. I must have misheard. Of course I had. "I'm going to wash up," I said. In the bathroom, I turned on the faucet and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, my makeup had smudged slightly. I leaned over the sink to rinse off my mascara. When I straightened again, I noticed something strange in the reflection behind me. The bathroom door was slightly ajar. The hallway beyond was dark. But I saw a figure pass across the doorway. A woman. She was wearing my robe. My heart skipped. For a split second I told myself it was just my reflection in the mirrored closet door down the hall, but the angle was wrong. "Daniel?" I called. "Did someone come over?" Silence. I turned off the water, dried my face with a towel, and stepped into the hallway. The living room was empty. The candles were out. The television was off. "Daniel?" I called again, louder. I checked the bedroom. Empty. The bed was perfectly made, though we had been lying on it half an hour earlier before moving to the living room. Not a single crease in the blanket. Back in the living room, the lasagna was gone. No dirty dishes. No champagne bottle. The coffee table was bare, and covered in a thin layer of dust. My hands began to shake. I ran to the front door to check the lock. It was secured from the inside, bolted twice. The keys lay on the entry table. That's when I heard laughter. A woman's laughter. It was coming from the kitchen. I walked toward it slowly. My legs felt distant, unreliable. One thought hammered in my skull: I'm losing my mind. I'm dreaming. This is a nightmare. In the kitchen, Daniel was sitting at the table. Across from him sat a girl. She was wearing my pajamas. She had my hair. She was holding my favorite mug. They were sitting with their backs to me. "Is she still here?" the girl asked, in my voice. "She'll be gone soon," Daniel replied. He took her hand. "Memory isn't reliable. She'll just forget she ever lived here." "Hey!" I screamed. "What the hell is going on?" They didn't turn around. They didn't even flinch. As if I were a ghost no one could hear. I rushed forward and grabbed Daniel by the shoulder. My hand passed straight through him. I froze. I looked down at my hands. They were faintly translucent. I could see the pattern of the wallpaper through my palms. "Must be a draft," the girl, who looked exactly like me, shivered. "Close the door." Daniel stood, walked through me as though I were smoke, and shut the kitchen door directly in front of my face. I was left in the dark hallway. I began screaming, pounding on the door, but my hands made no sound. I ran to the mirror by the entrance. The hallway reflected back empty. No one was there. I tried to grab my phone from the table. My fingers slipped through it. But the screen lit up at my touch. The lock screen displayed a photo, Daniel and the girl. They were embracing. The timestamp said today. That's when I understood. I hadn't been thrown out. I had been erased. Replaced with a newer version, more convenient, more vibrant. And I had become leftover data. A residual file. Trash in the operating system of reality. I fled the apartment. The door didn't need opening, I simply passed through it. I ran down the stairwell, but the floors wouldn't end. 4th floor. 3rd. 2nd. Then 3rd again. Then 4th. I was trapped in a loop between levels. I've been sitting here on the steps for what feels like an eternity. Sometimes people pass by. Some of them look like me, transparent, disoriented, forgotten by the ones they loved. We don't speak. There's nothing to say. Sometimes I climb back up to my door and listen. Inside, I hear laughter. The clink of glasses. Life going on. Just without me. Happy Valentine's Day. Take care of yourselves. And if your partner ever looks at you as if they're seeing you for the first time, run. While you're still solid. I stared at the bouquet of red roses lying on my doormat. Rainwater dripped from the petals, pooling into a small dark stain on the concrete. The building's front entrance was secured with a magnetic lock. My apartment door was locked twice and bolted from the inside. No one had rung the bell. No one had knocked. Yet the flowers were there. Fresh. Velvety. Fragrant with something sweet and faintly rotten at the same time. I bent to pick them up, and my fingers brushed against a small card pinned to the stems. The handwriting was uneven, jagged, but I recognized it instantly. The air left my lungs as if I'd been punched. It was my husband's handwriting. The husband we had buried exactly 1 week earlier. People will say grief makes you see things that aren't there. That coincidences happen. But what happened to me, and to the others in this story, cannot be explained away as mourning. These are stories about love that refuses to die, and Valentine's gifts that should never be opened. Remember, sometimes forever is not a promise. It's a threat. The first Valentine's Day without him was supposed to be just another gray day in a chain of gray, meaningless hours. Daniel died at the beginning of February. A car accident. Stupid. Instant. Irreversible. I was still moving through life on autopilot. Wake up, drink coffee, stare at the wall, try to sleep. That morning, February 14th, the doorbell rang. It was 9 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends knew I wasn't up for visitors, and delivery drivers usually called first. I threw on a robe and shuffled across the cold floor to the peephole. The landing was empty. I waited, listening. Silence. The distant hum of the elevator somewhere down the corridor. Maybe the neighbors' kids were fooling around. I unlocked the door and opened it slightly. A box sat on the threshold. Matte black. Tied with a dark red ribbon. No courier logos. No shipping label. Just the box. My heart stumbled. Daniel loved gestures like this, dramatic, minimal, stylish. Maybe he had ordered it in advance? The thought pierced my chest, sharp and desperate. People do that, don't they? Schedule gifts weeks ahead. And then life, or death, intervenes. I carried the box inside. It was light. My hands trembled as I pulled the ribbon loose. Inside, nestled in crinkled black paper, lay a silver pendant shaped like a teardrop and a folded note. The handwriting was his. The same sharp angles in the T's, the same slight slant to the left. You will never be alone. Love, D. I broke down on the hallway floor, clutching the note, howling like something wounded. It was his final gift. His last gesture. I put the pendant on, feeling the cold metal against my skin, and for the first time in a week I felt something other than emptiness. Warmth. He had taken care of me. Even from beyond. The day passed in a strange haze of gratitude. But that evening, when dusk thickened outside and rain began tapping at the windows, my phone rang. It was Daniel's mother. She was crying, wishing me strength, telling me how hard it was. Thank you, I said, trying to steady my voice. Anne. Thank you for the gift. I know you probably helped him with the order or found it. What gift, sweetheart? Her tone changed. The pendant. A courier brought it this morning. He must have ordered it before. Before the accident. Silence stretched between us. We went through his phone and email, she said quietly. Cancelled subscriptions. Closed accounts. There were no orders. No flowers. No jewelry. Nothing in the last month except food delivery. Cold slid down my spine. But the handwriting, I whispered. There was a note. Send me a picture. I did. A minute later she called back. It looks like his handwriting, she admitted. But look at the letter L in alone. Daniel always looped it upward. This one goes down. Someone copied his style. I hung up and stared at the black box. If it wasn't him, then who? And why? A cruel joke? But who would know my address, know how he signed his notes, and spend money on silver? I convinced myself his mother was mistaken. Stress. Age. Poor eyesight. I left the pendant around my neck, but I slept with the bedside lamp on. The second gift appeared 2 days later. I was coming back from the grocery store when I noticed something white inside my mailbox. A thick envelope. Expensive paper. No stamp. No postmark. Just my name, Anna. I opened it under the flickering hallway light. Inside was a photograph. A Polaroid. It was me. sleeping in my bed. The picture had been taken from the bedroom doorway. I was wearing the same t-shirt I had slept in the night before. The world tilted. The grocery bag slipped from my hand. A jar shattered on the floor, but I didn't hear it. I stared at the photo. At the bottom, in that almost Daniel handwriting, were the words, "You look so beautiful when you sleep." I promised I'd stay close. I ran upstairs, skipping steps. Burst into the apartment. Locked every bolt. Someone had stood in my doorway while I slept. I called the police. They came quickly. Checked the locks. Intact. Windows closed. No signs of forced entry. "Does anyone else have a key?" the officer asked. "Only me. Anne." Daniel did. But his keys. They were never found at the crash site. The car had been crushed beyond recognition. His belongings scattered across the highway. We assumed the keys were lost in the snow. They took a report. I saw it in their eyes. They thought I was a grieving widow losing her mind. They advised me to change the locks. I called a locksmith immediately. While he replaced the cylinders, I sat in the kitchen holding a knife. I couldn't stay there, but I had nowhere else to go that night. I didn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. I barricaded the bedroom door with a dresser. In the morning, I decided to go to my parents' house in another city. I opened my suitcase on the bed. Stepped into the bathroom to grab my toothbrush. I was gone no more than 2 minutes. When I returned, a single red rose lay on the pillow. Not fresh. Dry. Dead. Blackened. And a note. "Why are you changing the locks, my love? You know there are no barriers for love." I screamed. I ran out of the apartment in whatever I was wearing, clutching my phone and car keys. I flew down the stairs, not waiting for the elevator. I could swear I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, measured. I jumped into my car and locked the doors. Only after I'd driven several blocks did I dare look in the rearview mirror. A figure stood on the sidewalk in front of my building. A person in a dark hood. Not moving. Just watching me. Even from that distance, I thought I recognized the jacket. Daniel's blue parka. The one he had worn the last day he left the house. I've been living with my parents for 3 months now. The police never found anyone. When they searched my apartment after my second call, they found no intruder. But they did find something else. In the back of my walk-in closet, behind boxes of winter boots, they discovered a crumpled blanket, empty water bottles, and a hole in the drywall leading into the building's maintenance shaft. Someone had been living there. Inside my walls. Listening to me breathe. Watching me cry for my husband. Writing those notes. But the worst part isn't that. The worst part happened yesterday. Another Valentine's Day. A different address. My parents' house. A courier delivered a bouquet of lilies. No words on the card. Just a date. February 14th. Next year. And a smiley face. The exact one Daniel always used to draw. We matched on Tinder a week before the holiday. His name was Vlad. Handsome, witty, a software engineer. His photos looked real, not model perfect, but alive. We texted for hours. He seemed normal. In a world of unsolicited pictures and bizarre propositions, he felt like a breath of fresh air. For Valentine's Day, we agreed on a video date. I had recently moved into a new apartment in another neighborhood. Not all the boxes were unpacked yet, and I didn't feel like going out into a crowd. Vlad said he was a homebody too. "I'll send you dinner," he wrote that afternoon. "Order whatever you want. My treat. And wine." It was sweet. That evening, I did my makeup, put on a nice dress, only the top half would be visible anyway, and lit candles. A courier delivered sushi and a bottle of expensive Riesling. At 8:00 p.m. my laptop chimed with an incoming Skype call. I clicked accept. Vlad appeared on the screen. He was sitting in a dim room, his face lit only by the glow of his monitor. He smiled. "Hi, Marina. You look incredible." "Hi," I said, brushing back my hair. "Thank you for dinner." We chatted for about 20 minutes. Everything felt perfect. He joked, I laughed. The wine warmed my head pleasantly. "You know," he said suddenly, his expression turning serious, "I want to give you another gift." "What kind?" "I know you love technology. I've made a few improvements to your apartment." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Turn around." I did. Behind me, in the hallway, the lights flicked on. By themselves. I flinched. "You have smart bulbs, right?" His voice came through the speakers a little louder now. "Philips Hue?" "Yes." I murmured. "But how did you?" "Your Wi-Fi password was too easy, Marina." "Your birthdate. You shouldn't be so careless." My stomach tightened. This wasn't flirting anymore. It was intrusion. "Vlad, this isn't funny. Stop." "But I've only just begun." Suddenly music from my smart speaker in the living room blasted at full volume. A distorted, slowed-down love song roared through the apartment, bass pounding against my skull. I jumped to my feet, shouting over the noise. "Turn it off. Right now." On the screen, Vlad simply watched me. He wasn't smiling anymore. His face was stone. The lights began to flicker. Red. Black. Red. Black. Like a cheap horror movie, except this was my apartment. My safe place. "What do you want?" I screamed, yanking at the speaker's cord. "I want to be closer," his voice answered, not from the laptop now, but from the speaker itself. He had hacked the voice assistant too. I rushed to the laptop to slam it shut and cut the connection. And then I saw it. Behind him, in the background of his video feed, I recognized the wallpaper. Beige, with a faint floral pattern. The same wallpaper in my bedroom. I froze, staring at the screen. Vlad sat in a chair. Behind him was a slightly open closet door. My closet. Slowly, I turned my head toward my real bedroom. The door was closed. "Do you like my background?" he asked calmly. "I'm not there right now. That's a recording. I filmed it an hour ago while you were in the shower." The world collapsed inward. He had been there. In my apartment. An hour ago. While I was naked and vulnerable, shampoo in my hair, he had been sitting in my bedroom recording a video for this call. "Where are you?" I shrieked. "I never left, Marina." The call ended. The screen went black. Silence swallowed the apartment. The light stopped flickering and settled into a steady, sickly red glow. And then I heard it. The slow creak of a closet door in the bedroom. I didn't go to check. I didn't grab a knife or my phone. I ran for the front door. My fingers fumbled at the locks, nails tearing, skin scraping. Behind me, from the bedroom, came heavy footsteps. I burst onto the landing, slammed the door shut, and pounded on my neighbor's apartment. "Help! Call the police!" An elderly man opened immediately. He let me in while I shook and sobbed. We called the police. When they forced open my apartment, it was empty. But the bedroom window stood wide open. On the windowsill were muddy boot prints. My laptop was gone. And on the bed, neatly arranged, lay printed screenshots of our chat history. On top of them, a bouquet of withered black roses, tied together with the cord from my phone charger. The police later discovered the Tinder account had been fake. The IP address traced back to an internet cafe across the city. Vlad, whatever his real name was, vanished. But he left me one more gift. A week later, I received a notification from my cloud storage account. Someone had uploaded a video. It was footage from my laptop's webcam. In it, I was asleep, recorded several nights before Valentine's Day. The camera zoomed slowly in on my face, then out again. And then a hand in a black glove entered the frame. It moved slowly, almost tenderly, stroking the air a millimeter from my cheek. I covered every camera in tape. I disconnected every smart device. I moved to an apartment with no internet. But sometimes, at night, when I lie in the dark, I see the small LED on the smoke detector blinking. And I swear it's blinking in Morse code. I am here. With love.